Welcome everybody back to the channel. My name is Joshua. Today we are going to be going through a Genshin Fontaine tier list. Now, I understand that a lot of these characters potentially haven't necessarily had their full kits released. However, I think it is still good to note about some of the characters that are available and that we understand and know their kits so far, so that we can actually talk about them and maybe make some speculations on what other characters could do and where they could fit into our current collection of characters, so that you can plan pretty much all of your Fontaine pulls, that you guys don't get gypped. All right, why don't we start from 4.0? Let's start talking about Lene, Lynette, and Freminette. Now, Lynette came into the game amongst some of, the greatest DPSs in the game, right? Yoimiya, Hu Tao is really strong, right? Xiangling is just overall, why does she do that much damage? But Lene, surprisingly, even at C0, R1, or even if you don't necessarily have R1, although R1 does really help a lot, the first grade magic is insanely strong. I think Lene sits at an A tier, to be honest. Yeah, whether it's like a slightly higher A tier or like an A- tier, definitely better than your average like B character. I would say like B is like good average, and then C is like kind of bad average, and D will be like So I think Lene sits comfortably whatever you range it at in the A tier. I think Lene was a great character, super strong, and introduces to us a lot of different mono pyro variations. I think is super strong as of current. Of course, when situations don't necessarily call for pyro, Lene's gonna be a little bit stuck because they excel so well with other pyro units. It would be redundant to bring more pyro to situations where you wouldn't need it. So that could be a consideration for B tier, but I think for what Lene does damage-wise, I think they'll sit like an A- tier for me. Lynette. Lynette is better than Sayu. Me personally, I think Lynette comes in, sort of in the middle of Sayu and in the middle of maybe like a Jean almost. She definitely does not compare to the likes of a Sucrose, Kazuha, or Venti. However, she can do quite a bit of swirls, and especially if you do have constellations, I think Lynette is going to be pretty strong for a lot of beginner accounts, especially if you don't necessarily have Anemo options. Lynette will be pretty solid, and hey, she's free, or she was free. So that also adds to her people as overall players. Now, Freminette. Freminette is one classic Shatter character. People have compared Freminette to the 4-star Eula. People have compared him to Shatter Chongyun. A better Shatter Chongyun at that. So I would say he's like I wouldn't say he's a 4.5-star character, but I think his playstyle is smooth enough. I think he has well-defined teams that have great support casts, has a great supporting cast beside him, so that he can be effective with multiple and different types of supports. Although Freminette, isn't, again, cryo isn't the most effective element as per the meta of the game, I think Freminette still does quite a bit of damage. I would say he's on the low B end, but still a really solid character. Unfortunately for Jonathan, it is better than Chongyun. Next, our newest character, Neuvillette. Now, Neuvillette comes to us as an on-field hydro just cannon of a character, and his kit and a lot of his, best artifacts and stuff are actually coming from some of the new content, in particular the new artifacts from Fontaine, which those actually have not necessarily been utilized very well by, let's say this current cast. Lene does use the Marchase, right? But Golden Troop just hasn't been used yet by any of these Fontainian characters. Neuvillette, unfortunately, is a Marchase character. But is Neuvillette an A tier or an S tier? When compared with the other Fontainian characters, I would say he either tops A or is S tier. Now, the only reason I would put him, quote unquote, this low in some people's estimations is because of one particular Hydro Archon that we don't necessarily know yet, and that will predicate his relative position. But as you guys can see, you guys already know Neuvillette is held very high and is highly sought after, and in particular with the 4.1 banners, I think Neuvillette is probably going to be the character out of the 4, even with the reruns, that you will want to pick up. Next, Wriothesley, as they say in game, Wriothesley, Worcestershire sauce, goes by many nicknames. He is the Cryo Gauntlet Catalyst character. I have heard stories that, and this will be confirmed once his kit is confirmed, that there are some issues potentially that need to be fulfilled with the C1. Now, do we know if Wriothesley is a standard character? That might change people's opinions on whether it would be easier or harder to get his constellations. Again, whether he's limited or whether he's standard. If he is limited, then it'll be much harder to get a C1. Whether he's standard, it'll be much easier because you can get it on this banner and you can get it on the standard banner. We don't know for sure much of that information. For right now, we're going to say he's limited. And personally, yes, he does better than Freminette. Will he do better than Lynette? Yes. However, I do not think that Wriothesley is A tier, unfortunately. There are some conditions that he does need to fulfill in order to, reach that potential of damage. And that potential of damage isn't even as high as some of the other characters that will precede him, nor some of the characters that have already preceded him, right? Like your Ayakas, for example. Next, and we are getting into some spoiler territories. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be talking about actual leak content because there's no real kit information about these characters, but we can assume a lot about their characters based on their elements alone, and that will show us their value. So let's talk about, of course, the Hydro Archon has to go in S. There are two things that automatically make Focalors an S tier character. Firstly is the Hydro element. As you guys know, I preach that Hydro is one of the strongest elements in the game, aside from Dendro. For right now, in my ranking, it's Dendro, Hydro, Anemo, Pyro, Electro, Cryo, and Geo. That's my list. So, whether it's Freeze that she's best in, whether it is Mono Hydro, whether it's Vaporize, whether it is Hyper Bloom, whether it's Bloom, she has access to some of the best reactions in the game, just based off of her elements alone, which makes her one of the most powerful characters in the game already, just by her status, which is kind of insane. And now to what her kit does, we don't necessarily know. But there's no way they're going to shaft an Archon kit. The poster baby of Fontaine, that is Furina, you'll be very hard pressed to think that miHoYo would drop the ball with Furina. Next, we're not terribly sure where Charlotte's going to lie, but we can say that Charlotte lies in between the B and C tier. I'd be very hard pressed to think that Charlotte would be like an A tier character of sorts. That's not necessarily the purpose of a 4-star to be like A tier amongst the 5 stars. So we'll keep Charlotte at C tier for now. Although she most likely will be a cryo bow character. She seems like to be a bow character potentially. So we don't necessarily know that for sure. Okay, we don't know. C tier. Here comes the points of contention. There are two characters, two particular 5 stars that I'm looking at. Let's talk about who I think will come first, and that is Neuvillette. Now, Neuvillette coming in as the solo Geo character. I didn't think they were going to focus too much on Geo, so even just having one Geo character within the roster, is even surprising. No Dendro is surprising. and 3 cryos. Like, what is this? This is Fontaine, not the Cryo Land, not Snezhnaya. What is this? Neuvillette, as a Geo character, unfortunately, ends up around B tier just because of the Geo element itself. Unless Neuvillette is able to manipulate crystallized reactions, very much how Nilou enhances bloom reactions into those, you know, bountiful core blooms. If Neuvillette does something like that with crystallize, then you could see her jump to A. But if she's just some run-of-the-mill, maybe DPS Geo character, or maybe a support Geo character, you'll be very, very hard-pressed to find a Claymore, which is one of, now at this point, one of the worst offensive types in the game. A Geo Claymore character, you're going to be very hard-pressed to find them anywhere above B tier. And this Neuvillette is confirmed a Claymore character. We've seen her in the trailers. We've seen her during the cutscene in the Archon quest. So that is confirmed already. All right. The Geo Claymore character. Next, we have to look at our duelist champion, Clorinde. Clorinde is going to be an Electro, I believe, sword character as per the trailers and as per the Archon quest. And we've had our run-of-the-mill with some of the Electro sword characters, right? Kuki Shinobu, very well with Hyper Bloom. Keqing, very good with spread aggravates, right? Clorinde, not terribly sure where she lands in terms of like potential DPS, but I can suspect that she is going to be a very, very strong candidate for a DPS, sub-DPS character that'll land her in at least low A. She will perform better than Wriothesley, just based off of Electro element and the weapon typing. Seguin. I do not know a damn thing about Seguin, but, you know, if it's like a Yao Yao character, we could see them at A tier. We could see them at B tier or C tier. For now, I'm not going to throw out anything too crazy, so I'm just going to put them at C, okay? We don't know what Seguin does yet. We don't even know what element they're attuned to. She is very cute, but you don't know how well she's going to perform. Very much like Charlotte, so this is more of like, just like, I don't even know what the hell they do. We're going to stick them at C. So I don't want to make the assumption for you guys for this tier list, okay? And again, this tier list was made pre 4.1. And finally, projected to, and this is not confirmed, all right? No leaks or anything, but projected to be the last character to release in Fontaine, that is Father Arlecchino. Now, Arlecchino is potentially a fire element. They say fire. Hey, I don't know if they're fire. All right, they might be any other element. But when we take a look at some of the harbingers in the game, they are actually almost comparable to some of the archons. Although, you know, it's not to say that the archons can't just like jump that archon level and just like clap everybody. But in terms of like just like dueling kind of damage or dueling type of style, the harbingers can keep up. They are very, very strong, right? Tartaglia, when they release, one of the best hydro characters still to have released in you know, aside from like the Ayatos of the world, right? And unfortunately, we didn't get Senora, rest in peace, until Natlan maybe, I don't know. But Arlecchino is coming in potentially as our second harbinger character, and you'll be very, very hard pressed to find them in the support role. They will most likely be a sub DPS or a DPS role. And will we see them better than Lene? I'm gonna say yes. Will they be better than Neuvillette? I say no. I think Neuvillette is going to be, aside from Furina, the prime target for Genshin players to pull. So if we look from top to bottom, this is my personal tier list on where I think these characters lie on in terms of pullability, or how you should rank them in terms of pullability, as far as do they give you the most value. I think Furina is going to give you the most value. Neuvillette very close behind, as they are both 5-star hydro characters. Arlecchino and Lene being potential, well, I don't know about Arlecchino, but fire DPS, sub DPS on-field characters. They're going to be very strong. Clorinde, an Electro character. We've seen Electro work with Taser, work with Superconduct, work with Hyper Bloom, work with Spread Aggravate. You're going to be very hard pressed to find a bad Electro character in this point in time, especially if they were to be a 5-star. Again, as you can see, some of the worst elements like Cryo and Geo tend to land themselves a little bit lower on the pull list. And not only is it because of their element, but also because of some of their kit constraints, some of their weapon constraints, and such. And C tier, I just don't know about these characters at all. So I don't necessarily have the best gauge on these characters. But that'll conclude my Genshin Fontaine pull list. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of some of these characters and potential projected characters to come out. Let me know in the comments down below. Again, what you guys think of these characters. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. See you guys in the next video. It's your boy Josh. We'll see you later. Genshin F2Ps and Swipeys in the next Genshin video. Peace.